Morning, everyone. It feels fantastic to be presenting at the Big Data London this year. I am Prathiba Krishna. I am an AI and ethics lead at SAS UK and Ireland. I'm going to tell you a lot of things about responsible AI. But let me go ahead and kickstart the session by setting some expectations on what you'd probably walk away with at the end of this session. So I'm going to walk through quickly some key principles of responsible AI. I'm going to talk about ethical dilemmas. Probably most of you are aware of ethical dilemmas. You're familiar with the concept, but I'm going to talk a little bit of that because that actually nicely paves way to the next topic that I'm going to talk about, which is going to be the challenges when innovating responsibly. There's also one question. Okay, I get all that, but why do I have to bother? So I'll answer that as well, which ultimately gets into the place where I can say, okay, now I get all of this. Tell me, how do I make my AI responsible? And then we'll wrap up with key takeaways and Q&A, of course. So, principles of responsible AI. But before I tell you what principles of responsible AI means, what exactly do I mean when I say, or when I'm going to say responsible innovation, trustworthy innovation, ethical AI, all of those buzzwords? It's basically implementing analytical capabilities in an ethical, safe, secure way, in short, responsible. We know that it is critical. Technology does not exist in a vacuum. It affects all of us in unexpected ways. We have an undeniable impact on analytics on the society. You can't step away and say it doesn't affect me really. For example, analytics can help hospitals manage their inventory system like wheelchairs, bladder scanners, etc. Governments to actually help or enhance national security. Your sports teams to create a better fan experience. It's used in prison statements, AI as such. It's everywhere. It's probably in our hiring process as well. There's somewhere a machine is filtering out our CV. So it's across all the place. It has huge potential. It has huge benefits we've established, but it also has the capacity to cause unexpected harms when not treated right. Not created in a trustworthy, ethical manner, I suppose. I like to tell stories. I'm going to tell a small story. This is about wine. Too early for wine, not for me. I'm not alcoholic, but it's an example. So back in the days in the US, there was this wine industry parallel prohibition movement. So in 1900s, there was a perception in the society that alcohol consumption was contributing to the ills of the society. So the prohibition movement was instigated through power and influence. Federal laws were passed to say that you can't manufacture alcohol, you can't import them, you can't distribute them. It never said you can't drink them. What happened is basically it started to put vices in place to mitigate the consumption of alcohol. But later, it was a recognition that it wasn't really working. We learned that we like to have alcohol. But what we didn't figure out was how to make it how to consume it in a responsible way. Wine and spirit industry had something to say. They said they want people to be able to benefit from their products and services that people like to have. Not everybody. Whoever likes it, they want to give their supply. But they had to ensure that it's consumed in a responsible way. What did we do? So in 1970s, there was emergence of marketing campaigns, not just say enjoy your drinks. They started saying drink responsibly. So this is a similar example that I wanted to quote because we are in the similar stage for AI. We are all consumers of AI. What happened in the wine example is we had old structures that gave way to new demand. So there was transformation, there was transition, and then there was trust. So that's exactly what I'm telling when I put responsible innovation in a nutshell. So the whole innovation element looks like this. you have the collective package of responsible innovation. You have digital ethics, which is in accordance to principles. You have data ethics, which handles sort of the negative consequences on the quality of data. You also have the ethical AI, responsible AI as a core, which is the more and more we talk about the whole responsible innovation, this is what pretty much we talk about. So much similar to the alcohol example, we're trying to get the grip of the consumption of AI, sort of going a little bit ahead of the technology pace so that we have a handle on it, so that we actually don't harm human beings when we take on board everything. So how do we ensure that we develop solutions that's going to be consumed by everybody, not harmed by everybody, keep everybody in the good books? How is that possible? Because call it whatever you want, trustworthy AI, ethics by design, ethical AI, there's so many terminologies, and it might be a little bit confusing for people who don't spend a lot of time in the AI, responsible AI bubble. So be it trustworthy AI, responsible AI, it's basically the term which says, generally referring to the same concept, creating AI that promote human being, respect privacy, proactively mitigate adverse impacts, and majorly include diverse perspective, and ultimately be transparent about the decision making. So I've told a little bit about trustworthy / responsible / ethical AI. The key was to tell you the principles. So the core principles of responsible AI, according to SAS, are summarized in the slide here. Human centricity, keeping human beings in left, right, center of whatever you want to develop. Transparency element, the ability to use, consume AI openly and able to communicate your decisions to everybody who wants to know how their data is being used. Privacy and security, quite an important element, as the data we are using, as I said, is everyone's data. So how do you be mindful of that, which goes hand in hand with robustness? Because how do you ensure that your data is traveling throughout the end-to-end analytics lifecycle safely? And accountability, funnily enough, between usage of AI, the creators of AI, human beings, the consumers of AI are human beings. So accountability piece, how do you actually keep the human in the loop and say who is accountable when you go through the whole journey? And inclusivity, quite key, which covers the fairness, bias, all those core ethical elements, because no matter what, there is no possible reason as to why a particular group has to be treated differently when it comes to ethical solutions, unless there's a particular reason, which I will focus later. But inclusivity, because everybody are consumers of AI. So 6 core principles, which can probably cover all elements of trustworthy AI. So let me talk about ethical dilemmas then. I'm sure most of you are familiar with ethical dilemmas. Linking back to alcohol story, no, I'm not doing alcohol references anymore. So this is ethical dilemma. What I mean by that is that the hypothetical situation, this is sort of like a pop talk maybe, where you try and define the human element. And when you teach machines that human morality piece, it's going to be difficult because we don't have a defined human, we don't have a book of morality, we just go by that particular moment, and it can be very challenging when we don't have defined rule book. Take bias for facial recognition technology, for instance. The dilemma actually being facial recognition sometimes are used for exhibiting bias against race, gender, or age. So it can be serious complications or discrimination or privacy violation when used in surveillance, law enforcement, or hiring. Let's talk healthcare and decision making. There is a huge ethical dilemma that AI systems are increasingly used to assist patient diagnosis and treatment. What this means, this involves issues like transparency, patient consent, and sometimes the overuse of AI-driven diagnosis on patients, the recommendations and things like that. We will use the trolley in autonomous vehicle for today's session. That's another ethical dilemma. Ignore that scary picture there. It's basically the dilemma being an autonomous vehicle has to make a split-second decision, potentially swerving its occupants or to run a pedestrian, to hit a pedestrian, or like that, 4 against 1 kind of scenario. What happens then? Do we have something defined? Do we have a rule? What happens then in situations like that? So that raises question on who should be harmed, who is accountable on that sort of decisions. So how do I arrive at a solution that's globally getting accepted? Because there's no right or wrong answer here. So how do I first arrive at that, and how do I tell machines following that? Because machines take everything from the data, and if the data knew this, we probably don't need humans. We can have machines all over around. But this gives out the reason as to why responsible innovation is important. But unlike every situation, there are challenges when it comes to innovating responsibly. I'm going to answer this after covering whys and whats and come back to this slide to say, maybe you will arrive at the answer when I'm concluding that. So what actually challenges when innovating responsibly? Starting off with, we don't have a regulatory move yet. It's almost on the way, but because AI has been consumed a lot, again, linking back to the alcohol story, unless we get the grip, I can come up with my own rules, but if I roll it out to someone else, be like, do we have a rule? What do I have to follow this? So there's no standardized way of looking at this. Like I said, teaching machines the human morality can be difficult because if the data doesn't know, the algorithm doesn't know. Bias in the data. I once got really curious and went to Google and said, Google, is there any way of finding any unbiased data? Sadly not, because all data are some way or the other, some level or the other biased. Is that? And it's the speed of advancements that we have right now on a day-to-day basis. And one of the major challenges, most of the companies have already started onboarding AI journey. So if I have to take the responsible innovation route, does it mean that I have to change what I have already? So it's that lack of awareness and education as well, really. Because if you take bias, for instance, bias is not a tiny thing to cover. It's probably a whole session for itself. We have to start thinking about bias the moment data comes into the organization. What are we doing with it? Are we sharing it? Are we processing it? Are we discussing it? Are we actually just disposing it? Because this slide illustrates the custody of data chain of custody, basically. I'm not quite zooming in the bias, types of bias, but at any point of given time, from acquiring data to deploying insights, bias can creep in. And as we all know, machine learning algorithms, by definition, learn from what's fed in the data. So if it's in the training data, it's going to be in the output data. Bias. Some will argue bias is bad, but I think lack of awareness of bias is even worse. And there is such thing called positive bias that I wanted to previously cover. Say, for example, there is a financial services company which has got a £1 billion investment on providing capitals for minority ethnic group to women group to start a business. Wouldn't that be a good thing to know then? If a minority group woman wants to apply, we'd want to know it. So there is something called positive bias, but the impact of bias generally is looking at making sure you're aware of it. So I get all that. Why are you telling me all this? Because I went a bit ahead. So this is a conversation that I constantly have with everybody these days, most of us. So AI sounds a lot of trouble. I know there's AIs and systems, but do I have to upgrade? Why would I bother? Because we human beings, we love to upgrade ourselves. Let's be honest. It's part of our evolution. We always have been seeking for smarter, better solutions that actually can make our lives better. Does it mean that it's going to take away our jobs? Another challenge, another question I get answered. I have another small story for that, actually. So when somebody asks me, is AI going to take away jobs? I start with this story. Back in the days, there was this guy. He wakes up every morning. He was probably working for the government or something. He had a huge candle light, and his job was to go light up every street light. That was his full-time job, unless electricity was found. Does it mean that we actually got rid of all the jobs? Not probably. He probably hated that he lost his job, but there was a lot more jobs created, like electricians, maintenance, and then a little more recently, I sort of belong to that era actually, when the computers were coming to start on board. Kind of gives out my age. I'm not comfortable with that. But when computers were coming to come on board, we had calculators, books writing things. Okay, there's machines now that's going to take over everybody's job. Are we all jobless now? No, we're not. We somehow managed to create more and more jobs. So the point is, it's similar with the AI situation as well. We love to upgrade ourselves. So understanding the importance of innovating responsibly and actually embracing the technology and the technological journey is quite key, I suppose, because we are here to make AI available for business, for people, to make people's lives better, and also do good for the society. So it's a collective package, I suppose. Emphasizing my point a little bit further in words, because I think I talked through a particular slide. So basically, ethical innovation means you're doing the right thing, you're fostering long-term sustainability. The importance of trustworthy AI is like it builds trust. The graph on the right is from Stephen Thiel. So this has several elements of ethical AI that you want to roll out. So, for example, if I'm working as a consultant for a company and I think fairness and accountability is your number one priority, you working for that company might think, no, I think I need explainability and transparency as my key element to start rolling out before I talk about other ethical AI units. So the point is, there are several elements of responsible AI. It's not like one place to say, I've done it. So it's about choosing which one you want as a good starter. If not, you don't know where to start. Start by considering explainability in your models as your step one, or governance in your model. It could be any of these. They have a good overlapping between one another. Because I've already talked a lot about advantages of long-term advantages on ethical AI. They support vulnerable customers. You have boosted customer loyalty. You get that feeling of saying, okay, they are doing AI for the business. So that trust element is quite important. I've heard someone saying that it is a lot easier to retain trust than to try and regain it. So not just rolling out ethical AI, but making sure you're actually still being relevant, the models giving relevant solutions. That monitoring element is also key when you're rolling out responsible AI, so that you are giving the right thing to the customer and you're constantly validating and monitoring your solutions. A little bit more on the benefits, because I like to talk about good side. Which is why we continue to use and develop the technology, I suppose. So AI not only makes our life convenient, like I said, it's not taking our jobs, it's automating manual tasks so that we can do more things. Consistent level of intelligence that AI has got, especially in terms of, even in the medicinal field, the goodness it has got, improved cancer screening, monitoring endangered wild species, you name it, we have application everywhere. And we are always bound to have technological advancements someday or the other. So all we have to do is not leave anyone behind, of course. Not to mention the fun and games of Gen AI. I work majorly for financial industry. So this slide is for financial services, the asks of Gen AI, how it has done the conversations overnight, really. Financial services, healthcare, retail. So technological environment can change your life in probably a week or maybe a day, in fact. So that gives a key piece on the accountability. So when it comes to the consumption of AI, accountability comes both ways. Us who develop and the consumers, and probably the whole picture. We have the human in the loop and the account. We are all responsible in a way or the other, not just the developers. You have the right to find out, is this the right way to do things? We have the right to explain you, are we doing the right thing? So it goes both ways, basically. So that's how I think we try and strike the balance between profits and doing good. As I mentioned, not to do it again on regulation. It's already there. Next year, we are going to start onboarding AI EU Act. There's going to be more and more regulations, laws where we are going to start bounding by it. So if not thinking about it yet, you should start thinking about responsible innovation already. Because the government has recognized the lack of consensus in operationalizing AI, giving that in the right way to the people, making it standardized to everybody. Sorry, enough. You've told me a lot. Tell me, how do I get there? The good news is we have tools and systems to make AI responsible. You don't have to change your overall practices. You can still balance risk and rewards. I like this slide. So if you're a data scientist, you're probably familiar with all of it. If you belong to the data journey, then you all know that every data science problem starts with a business problem. Somebody comes to you and says, I have data, can I have solutions? So you start with your data ops, where you start talking about what data do I have access to? Can I prepare it? Can I understand what I already know to establish what I don't know? Start putting governance in place. And then you go to your fun modeling element, where you've established what you don't know. You need to find the right algorithms, right tooling, right solutions. Start developing your mathematical, data science, machine learning models. And then once you've done your model, you might want to start validating, see how you've done. And then you would start going into your deploying phase as well, automating, monitoring, retrain, and then go into decision. So the reason I told this is because responsible AI is not saying, right, I've checked, I've done it. There is elements of responsible AI, much like I've sold on the accountability, governance. You have data quality, you have information privacy that you can start early at your data managed data ops level itself. And then when you develop models, talking about your natural language insights, your Via has got natural language insights, but you could embed that, or you could go into your model interpretability. There are state-of-the-art assessment mitigation techniques, like for your interpretability or fairness testing, your LIMEs, your SHAPs, your parity metrics, etc. And then model governance, decision accountability, all those gives you the whole transparency, lineage, and the trust that you're doing the right thing. This is Via's version. So SaaS has got responsible AI elements, much like in its tool, but on rolling out as a technology, as a services to customers as well. There's not just bias detection, there's bias mitigation, synthetic data. We're talking about digital twin. We're talking about the whole literacy education piece as well, explainable AI. These are a lot of metrics on responsible AI. So if you're not starting to think, going back to your models, you might want to think now, okay, what elements of responsible innovation can I start thinking? Talk to my manager, talk to my boss, talk to my C-suite about all these elements already. Because it's quite imminent, and this is probably how a sample would look like. This is Via's version. When you start considering your bias mitigation, you can see the bias fairness is coming out. It's quite checking a box. I'm looking at it, I'm assessing models on them. So those little elements is a good starting point to start your journey. You can also have start initializing your customer ethics group, data ethics practice within your organization, where you can have both your technical, non-technical audience to come in and chip in. People who knows business, knows more about data, bring them in. Start your little group, because data ethics group can start for customized, subjective way, and it can vary from company to company, and it adds a lot of value. Just being mindful of time. Coming back to my ethical dilemmas, you probably know how to handle it when it comes to situations where we haven't got the human morality defined. talk about your ethical guidelines, what is right, what is wrong, how to prioritize human safety first in situations like this, talk about explainable AI, how did the machine come into that kind of conclusion for us to understand the reasoning behind it, behaviors. And like I said, not just your little company group, but bring public in, because you have to be transparent, engage your stakeholders, bring a lot of people in, because the more and more you add perspectives, the more and more, the better your rule book looks for your organization when you use data. I'm going to conclude 6 key takeaways. No, 6 core principles. Responsible innovation, you can put it into 6 core principles. Implementing responsible AI means understanding challenges and acting accordingly. Regulations are coming, I'm sure you're all aware. Start enacting on principles. AI, I've talked a lot about risks and rewards, so it comes with both, so how to get a grip of it. Trustworthy AI is not a checkbox to say I've done it, it's a whole approach. We at SAS, just on the stall behind this theater, come talk to us. There's a lot of responsible innovation, much more than responsible innovation, you name it. Data management, model ops, all topics. We can talk. I'm always available to talk. But scan to understand more about responsible innovation. And thank you. I'll take questions now.